What role did Anthony Fauci play in that?
Would that be a top priority of yours?
Biden-Harris administration not only
taking away the right for Pfizer, Johnson & Johnson, Moderna.
wasn't Fauci.
What about stuff with Big Pharma?
CIA even believes that. Think about my lawsuit against China. Again, like this is a first of its kind where we've sued China for inflicting the COVID pandemic on the United States of America and then hoarding PPE and depriving Americans and the government of the state of Missouri from being able to access the PPE that we need to respond to the pandemic they caused. What role did Anthony Fauci play in that? We now know, based on recently declassified documents, that the CIA even believes that the COVID-19 came from a lab in China, not randomly jumping from animal life to human life at some marketplace in Wuhan. Well, wasn't Fauci helping suppress some of that information? And what was his involvement in that research and in that lab in China? And so is there civil liability there? And again, I think people still demand justice for the wrongs that were perpetrated against the American people, not only by the Chinese government, but by the deep state like Anthony Fauci. And so, I think making that transparent through an investigation and airing that, it's not a bad thing. It can only be a good thing. And there might be additional liability points beyond the criminal code.
I mean, so in a picture perfect world, you would like to see the federal government conduct the investigations through all the people that were pardoned and have that information revealed to the American public.
I think we have a right to know. And I think that, again, first of all, I have grave concerns about the legal validity of any legal document that Joe Biden signed after he was determined by his own Department of Justice to lack the mental acuity for an intentional act. So yeah, I think we need to understand what happened there, what went wrong, and are there systems in place to redress grievances that are still available to us?
What would you do if you were the AG?
Well, let me say this. Pam Bondi, who is President Trump's nominee, who may very well be confirmed at this point, is going to be a fantastic United States Attorney General. I mean, I got to meet her and just think the world of her. She was the Attorney General of the state of Florida previously, so she's seen it from the state level. She's an incredibly gifted and talented attorney. She's a great manager and motivator of people, and she's going to have a large organization that she's going to have to not only clean house, eliminate the deep state, but reorganize and reprioritize missions to maximize the role that the DOJ is supposed to play. And so there's going to be a lot on her plate. She is up to the task and will get it done. And, I think that...
I'm asking if you, though.
Yeah.
If you were in there,
yeah,
not Pam Bondi, if you were in there, I'm just curious about how you think and what your strategy
I think you
would be.
got to find resources to address these issues and to investigate these matters and to lay the information in front of the American people. To do otherwise is a form of censorship of information. And look, censorship is the lazy tool of a weak mind. And it's counterproductive. People don't trust their government if they don't think they're being told the truth.
Yeah.
And I think we look back at COVID and what happened and Dr. Anthony Fauci, and we feel like we were deceived and lied to.
Would that be a top priority of yours?
Absolutely.
What would some other top priorities be?
So I think there are 3 strategic objectives that have to be secured now. I think the top priority has got to be the border. If we don't have a border, we don't have a country. And the Biden-Harris administration not only allowed illegals to cross by refusing to enforce the immigration code, but they actually perverted the immigration code to find legal loopholes to allow people in under the parole process that we've had to file suit against to put a stop to. And the parole in the immigration code, there's a provision that allows the government to allow people into this country for a limited time, limited purpose on an individual basis. Well, Biden and Harris said, no, we're going to use that to allow in X number of Haitians, X number of Guatemalans, Y number of Hondurans. They created a visa program that was never authorized by Congress. That's a perversion of the law, an abuse of the law. It undermines the rule of law. And it hung an open sign. It not only allowed in people who had no legal right to be here, but it hung an open sign that created the porous border problem that's making Missouri communities and communities across the United States of America less safe. So we've got to secure the border. We've got to deport criminals who have violated the laws of the United States of America. That's got to be strategic objective number one. Strategic objective number two is the right to free speech. And again, it's dismantling the vast censorship enterprise in the government that started with the deep state, but was then energized by President Joe Biden. President Trump's already begun doing that with his executive order on day one. Mm-hmm. But we've got to have a free, fair, and open marketplace of ideas. We've got to end corporate censorship as well. And then really the third strategic objective in my mind is ending the weaponization of government. And we saw that abused, and it was counterproductive to the left. And I think that's why President Trump delivered this historic landslide election. And thank goodness the American people saw through that. But we've got to end the weaponization of government. So I think as Attorney General, those have to be the three strategic objectives to be secured if we're going to save the country.
Do you think those are her top priorities?
I'm sure they are. Now, she may articulate them differently, but that's the formula for the Make America Great Again movement that President Trump has started and is continuing on today.
What about stuff with Big Pharma?
Yeah, I mean, were we lied to there too? I think there's questions that need to be answered. Are we still being lied to about the efficacy of vaccines? Specifically the COVID vaccine that seems to not be a vaccine at all. Mm-hmm. And so, what incentives were in place that caused that to happen? And it's all about holding wrongdoers accountable and putting systems in place to ensure that it doesn't happen again.
I mean, there's a lot of talk about pulling, not enabling or taking away the right for Pfizer, Johnson & Johnson, Moderna to advertise on media channels. Mm-hmm. And so, I mean, I'm kind of curious about your thoughts to that. I don't think it really does anything.
I don't either. It's a weird marketplace because just because I see an ad for a vaccine on television doesn't mean I can then go personally buy that. There's an intermediary in the form of a medical professional that has to prescribe and then administer that.
I think where I'm going with this is because those are some top advertisers. I mean, I never watched legacy media ever. I get all my news from interviewing folks like you.
Yeah.
But me and my wife were in a hotel a couple weeks ago. I did decide, I was like, oh, let's flip it on. Let's just see what they talk about. I turned on Fox News. It was like 3 out of 5 ads were pharmaceuticals, and so what I'm kind of getting at is because those are obviously their top advertisers, then they control the narrative. And it's, if you don't talk about this, then we don't advertise with you. Now, if we make it illegal for them to advertise on legacy media channels, they also have...
No matter where you're watching Shawn Ryan Show from, if you get anything out of this, please like, comment, subscribe, and most importantly, share this everywhere you possibly can. And if you're feeling extra generous, please leave us a review on Apple and Spotify podcasts.